Hello everyone! Welcome to another day of drawing. I hope you've all had a wonderful day so far. I know I have. Today I am thinking we will start out with 7 minutes of imposed lines and then 7 minutes of ghosted planes. And then we'll hop onto the ellipses. So get your pen and paper ready. I went out and got a new one of these because I lost the other one. So no longer need to use that dreadful blue pen. Ah, Afropunk, welcome back. It's been a while. Quante, ooh, we're getting a lot of people here. Very cool. Oh, law school is tough. I hear ya. So I will set a timer for 7 minutes and then we will just fill a page with imposed lines. You can begin drawing your straight lines with the ruler. And remember, you only need to practice one angle. You don't need to invent a new angle for every new line. Just whatever feels the most comfortable to you is good. Personally, I find drawing towards myself is the easiest. It allows me to relax my muscles rather than flexing them. And just letting it fall seems like it gives a much more natural straight line. Alright, see you tomorrow, Afro. Here, I'll post the superimposed exercise in chat if anyone can't really remember it. Thought that was a new fine pen, but apparently it's dried out. Remember to look at where your pen is going and not at the pen itself. Remember not to flex your wrist or shoulder. Nice and relaxed. Remember, if you're arcing your lines, then arc them in the opposite direction. Alright, so that was 7 minutes of imposed lines. Just a sec. Yes, so I will set a timer and we'll do some ghosted planes now. If you're having a hard time without resting your hand on the table, you can try holding your pen vertically. Might also give some more precision. We're doing the squares. Does anyone want to be moderator and see if they can figure out how to turn the moderation settings off? I've been around on multiple different forums to try and get an answer, but still haven't been able to figure it out myself. There are absolutely 0 words in my blacklist. So as you can see on the screen right now, Auto Moderator is level 0, Auto Mod is off. If we go into block terms and phrases, there's absolutely nothing here. Oh, what? Apparently the word "this" was blacklisted. I swear, I've checked this 3 times and I did not realize there was a word there. Oh my god, that is terrible. So sorry. No wonder no one knew what was happening. Yeah, you gotta censor your list from now on. Let that be a new meme. Never let me forget it. God, I wonder why, because it has to have been like 10 years ago when I was streaming Minecraft that I blacklisted the word "this." For whatever reason. I have no idea what my motive was 10 years ago. I think it just seemed funny at the time. Just made me laugh. Alright, well, that was 7 minutes of Ghosted Plains. So, let us hop over to the new lesson. That was a good warm-up. We will now get introduced to ellipses. Ooh, no more straight lines for us, we're getting circular. Gonna make those thick circles, yeah. Look, so, if you only made 1.5 plane, that means you're doing a really good job. That means you're ghosting a lot more. The less you do, the more qualitative it is, I suppose. Alright, so lesson 1. Ellipses.
So by this point, we've introduced lines, the overarching principles of mark making, and the all-important ghosting method. And you've gone through the assigned homework exercises for the line section as well. So let's take a look at what we've learned and apply it to something new: ellipses. All the shapes you see on this page are ellipses. Some of you may think, oh, I know those are ovals. But the argument that I want to make today is that they are all, in fact, circles. A circle is a shape where any point along its perimeter is the same distance from its center as any other. It's going to be the same height as its width, so any rectangle we draw enclosing it on all sides would itself be a square. Pretty obviously, most of the shapes on this page don't fit that criteria. But what if we took a circle in 3D space, like this disk, instead of the 2D space of this page? Unlike the drawings on the page, it can be moved around in all 3 dimensions of space, and it can even be rotated on all 3 axes. Everything we learn in this course is about taking things that exist in 3 dimensions and learning how to draw them on a flat surface, such that they still look to the viewer as though they're 3D. In order to do this, we have to learn what happens on the 2-dimensional page when a 3D form is moved around and turned about. What we see here is a circle, but if we focus on what we would actually draw to represent this circle from observation as it's rotated in space, you'll notice that it actually gets squeezed in one dimension and takes on an elliptical shape as it's rotated. An ellipse is just a circular shape that has been squeezed down by anything from nothing, so a circle itself is still an ellipse, to being squeezed down into a straight line. We call the width of an ellipse its degree. If you're familiar with geometry, we use degrees to express rotation. And this is no different, because the width of an ellipse changes based on its rotation relative to the viewer. An ellipse with a degree of 0 is just a line, because we're viewing the circle from the side. An ellipse with a degree of 90 has rotated a full 90 degrees to face us head-on. Note that as the disk is moved around in space without rotating it, the degree of the ellipse gets wider, allowing us to see more of its face, because the angle in question is the one between the viewer's angle of sight and the orientation of the circle in space. As the circle moves around in the world, this angle changes, even if the circle itself is not rotated. So you can see here that when you're looking down the edge of this circle, there's nothing to be seen on either side of it, but as you move it to the side, you can start to see a little bit of its face, so that degree of the ellipse is actually getting wider. This is important to consider because if we were to depict a tube running straight across our field of view, we wouldn't be drawing the ellipses with all the same degree. That degree would change as we sample different cross sections along the length of the form. So as you can see here, in this incorrect example, you've got the same degree on every ellipse that we look at along the length of this cylinder, and they're all the same, and that's incorrect. Instead, they would open up as they get further to either side of the viewer, because the actual angle between the viewer is opening up between the viewer and the circle itself. The last thing I want to introduce you to is a piece of the anatomy of an ellipse. It's called the minor axis. The minor axis is the line that cuts across the ellipse's narrowest point. So if we were to look at the different spans across which you could measure this ellipse, if we were still to pass through the center, then the narrowest point would be maybe about here. My pen is dying on me. So the minor axis is the line that cuts across that narrowest point, cutting it into two equal symmetrical halves. So the idea is that if I were to take this and fold it over, it would line up perfectly and you just end up with this. Ellipses also have a major axis that runs across the widest point, but ironically it's the minor axis which is the most useful to us. Just as an ellipse represents a circle in 3D space, the minor axis also bears an important relationship to something in 3 dimensions. If I were to take a toothpick and pass it through the center of my disk, you'll find that the toothpick is sitting about perpendicularly to the face of the disk itself. In physics, this is called a normal vector, but for those of you unfamiliar with that term, you can just think of it as the line in 3D space that is pointing straight out from the circle's surface, not slanting one way or another. The minor axis of our two-dimensional ellipse that we drew on our flat page represents the normal vector in 3D space, just as the 2D ellipse represents the 3D circle. So if I were to put down another ellipse, that was poorly done. If you were to picture this ellipse as being in 3D space, being an actual circle, then this line here would be the one coming off its surface, just as this toothpick does. This may seem kind of arbitrary right now, but it's actually extremely useful, because it allows us to align our ellipses relative to something that exists in the 3D world. If we know what direction the normal vector should be pointing, then we can draw it on the page and use it as the actual minor axis of our ellipse. So for example, if I draw that line first, then I can draw an ellipse that tries to align to this line. With a minor axis on the page, it is just a matter of drawing the ellipse so that it is cut into two equal symmetrical halves down its narrowest dimension by this line. And that's precisely what I did with the cylinder. You can see that I've got this straight line going straight down the middle. I've aligned all of these ellipses to it so that I can know that they're all going to be parallel to one another in the world. Because if you were to have a cylinder, I have another poorly cut out disc. If you've got a cylinder, which is basically just two circles connected by a tube, you want to make sure those circles are parallel to one another and not, awkwardly angled, because then they'd look skewed. So you want to make sure that they are parallel. It's like this toothpick in the minor axis forms the actual spine of the cylinder. And if the form as a whole rotates with that minor axis and that normal vector, then both ellipses will turn accordingly. Now, I fully expect that what I just explained is going to cause more than a few headaches, because this is the first point in the course where you're breaking down the barrier between two-dimensional space and three-dimensional space. I don't expect you to understand this immediately, but by laying down the theory behind these concepts, we're starting to plant seeds in your brain. The next step, once you've read through the written content for this section, is to water those seeds by working through the assigned homework exercises. Speaking of which, when you do those exercises and draw your own ellipses, there's two things I want you to remember to do. The first is to simply draw your ellipses from your shoulder. You can't see my whole shoulder right now, but I've got a whole video about it, how you can use your whole arm to draw, but I want you to make sure that you're not drawing them from your wrist, because these ellipses require the kind of smooth, fluid, even shapes that we can get from using our whole arm, not the kind of stiff precision that we can get from using our wrist. So if you were to draw it using your wrist, you'd have a very limited range of motion, and your ellipse will probably come out pretty uneven. If you draw it with your shoulder, you can draw bigger ellipses, smaller ellipses, it doesn't matter. It will come out more smoothly. Even the small ones can be drawn from your shoulder. The other point is that I want you to use the ghosting method for these ellipses, and frankly, for every mark where you're better off using your whole arm, use the ghosting method too. It'll help you to get into the habit of thinking before you draw and weighing how each and every mark contributes to a given drawing, so you don't have to put marks down wastefully. Of course, it'll also help you increase your overall control while allowing you to execute your marks confidently. To that point, remember that executing your marks confidently doesn't mean as fast as you can. It just means that you're drawing with the sense that you're always pushing yourself forward, not hesitating or trying to steer things with your eyes. As you can see here, I'm applying the ghosting method, but my execution isn't going nearly as fast as I could go. I'm just keeping an even pace. I'm always moving forwards. And there you go. It's still pretty smooth. It gets a tiny bit hesitant, so you will have to weigh, am I slowing down so much that I can't be confident at this pace? You will have points where you will inevitably start to wobble, and so as soon as you catch that, speed up a little bit more, but keep focusing on the fact that it's not just about speed, it's about being confident. So I can ostensibly draw a line that just continually moves forwards without very much wobbling, even though it's at a slow pace. Of course, had I sped that up a little bit, because that was a little below my threshold, it would have been smoother. So that about wraps it up for ellipses. Again, make sure that you read through the text as well. It goes over the same concepts I've explained here, but going through them in different forms and formats will help you wrap your head around them more easily. And of course, going back over videos, going back over the notes and whatever, even if you've watched and read them already, is always a good thing. It will help keep the information fresh in your mind, especially as you go through these exercises, which may take several days, depending on how much time you have anyway.
Okie dokie. So, all ellipses are circles rotated in space, and the line through the shortest side will always represent a line going through the center of it. Now we will have a look at the legendary Crispy? Crispy, where's your reading? Oh no. Oh, she failed us. Well, time for my amazing patented reading out loud method. Guess I'll just have to raw dog this one. What is an ellipse? Ellipses are extremely important and notoriously annoying to draw. You'll find them all over the place in mechanical drawings, cars, spaceships, tanks, machines. Anything man-made will probably make extensive use of ellipses. They also tend to feature prominently in organic drawings, especially as we look at the cross-sections of sausage-like forms. That's talking about the next lesson too. Let's take some time to explore what they are, how they behave, and how they can be used. 2D versus 3D. So, before we get into the complicated stuff, remember, drawing is, at least within this course, about taking things that are three-dimensional and capturing it on a two-dimensional surface. Be it a piece of paper, a canvas, or my friend's back who was stupid enough to have 16-year-old me design a tattoo for him that is basically stuck on his body forever. My god, poor guy. That means that drawing that means that drawing is really about figuring out how to represent 3D objects and to understand how the lines and shapes we use to capture them change depending on how those 3D forms move around and rotate in space. Just reading the chat. Throughout this course, I'm going to phrase things like things as this in 3D space or that in 2D space. Pay attention to which I use in a given situation because this stuff matters. Circles in 3D space. For our purposes, there is here in this course we're going to be using ellipses in two-dimensional space drawn on the page to represent circles that exist in three-dimensional space. Depending on whether you look at this as being two-dimensional or three-dimensional, this animated diagram depicts one of two things. In 2D space, it's a series of ellipses from the widest to the narrowest. In 3D space, it's a circle being rotated from facing towards the viewer to facing away. Here's a little diagram of the degrees. Hopefully we're familiar with this from 3rd grade. Degree. How our circle in 3D space is rotated relative to the viewer will determine just how wide our ellipses is going to be drawn. This width, always measured across the narrowest span that passes through the center of the ellipse, is referred to as the degree. Because it is tied to the angle of rotation in degrees of the circle itself relative to the viewer. When the circle in 3D space is facing the viewer, it is going to be at its widest 90 degrees. This is the same as drawing a circle on a page. As the three-dimensional circle turns away from the viewer, the ellipse representing it will get narrower until it finally reaches a degree of 0 when the ellipse is facing away. So by this logic, a straight line is a circle. There you go. Now you can prove it to all your friends and feel cool. Degree shift. Keep in mind that since this is based on the angle between the direction of the circle is facing and the direction of the viewer is facing, the degree will actually change just by moving the circle around in space without necessarily having to rotate it. This diagram demonstrates how the further to the right the circle moves relative to the viewer, the more its face becomes visible, resulting in a wider ellipse representing on the page, even without that circle being rotated in space. Throughout this course, we'll refer to this concept as the degree shift, basically the idea that the degree of our ellipses will shift wider or narrower depending on how it moves in space. And in the drawing it says, as the ellipse moves to the side, the angle increases, widening the degree of the ellipse, even though it hasn't rotated. Big brain stuff. The minor axis. We call the line that passes across the ellipse's narrowest span and through its center is the minor axis. This minor axis line will cut the ellipse into two equal symmetrical halves, so if it were to be cut out of the paper and folded in half across the line, it would match up perfectly. There's a major axis as well which runs perpendicular to it across the widest span, but it's the minor axis that is actually the useful component. Normal vector. Alright, this is math. Just as the 2D ellipse represents a 3D circle, the minor axis is extremely useful to us because of how that minor axis lines up. Axis line coincides with and aligns with the normal vector. Normal vector is just an arrow that is 90 degrees to a surface. The 3D line that shoots straight off the surface of the 3D circle, completely perpendicular to that surface. This means that we've got two ways of establishing the orientation of our circle in 3D space, as we draw it on our 2D page. One, the degree of which the ellipse the degree or width of the ellipse controlling the circle's rotation, the minor axis of the ellipse controlling the orientation of the circle's normal vector, basically the direction the circle is facing. If we need our circle to be oriented in a specific way in a more complicated scene, we will actually be able to start out with a normal vector line, then use it as the minor axis for our ellipses. Drawing the ellipse around it so the line splits into two equal symmetrical halves down the narrowest span. God, there was not a single period in this entire sentence. The ends of a cylinder share the same normal vector minor axis. Cylinders. Taking it further, the minor axis / normal vector is also extremely useful when we get into cylindrical forms. Here it serves as the spine to our form. The ends of the cylinder share the same normal vector in 3D and minor axis in 2D. But more than just the ends, if you sample any cross-sectional slice along the length of the cylinder, it'll also align with the same minor axis. Fortunately for you, we don't need to worry about this right now. Good. So all this geometry you just learned, just forget about it. You don't need it. They won't come into play until lesson 2. It's just useful to see how valuable the minor axis of an ellipse can be, specifically as we try to figure out all the ways in which we can represent different properties of a circle in 3D space. Whew. Alright. Let me just take a moment to read the chat. I think I found a guy that reads it out loud, says Juno. Oh, well, it's a bit too late for that, isn't it? We're already done. Yeah, if it's not crispy, it ain't worth listening to. Alright, so that was a lesson in physics, geometry, and perspective and math. Tomorrow we will be tackling the first exercise here. But I think we will just hop over to free draw now. There's no reason to grind or rush anything. I think 40 minutes of lesson is enough, and then as a reward we get free draw time. Yay! Cal asks if I tend to break it up. Yes, if one page becomes too much or too long, it takes too long, then we'll just break it up in multiple days. Also, I noticed a lot of you have started reading ahead and doing exercises in the future. There's really no need for this because we will get to it ourselves. If you really do want to, I'm not going to stop you, but patience is a virtue. There's no need to push ourselves or grind because that'll just end up pulling all the fun out of it, and we'll just end up burning out. Some of them might be ahead already before we started. Alright, that makes sense. So I will hop over here and set a 30-minute timer. Remember to draw from the shoulder. Relax your arm. No need to strain anything. Pokey suggests this song. Cool, our first song suggestion. Here we go. So we want a prompt. Some people want a prompt, so let me just come up with one out of my own creativity. Your prompt is guilt. Do with it what you want. And Boxbuster Lo-Fi, recommended by Pokey. I just want to point out that this is exactly the same song as on the previous one. No homework. Also, Ogre, all homework that is on the page we just do on stream. But we'll start with this one tomorrow. Luxuck wants to do some more planes. I mean, it's free draw, so you can do whatever you want, but the point of this is to do something that is fun for you to do. And if you want to do planes, go for it, alright? As long as you don't burn out, that's what's important. Yes, that's right, Bat Boy. It's the 50-50 rule. Every minute you spend on the lessons, you need to also spend on just free drawing whatever you want to draw. So this is not practice time. Alright, finish up your drawings and get them uploaded. Oh, okie dokie. Time to look at some drawings. This. God damn it, it's already starting. Very nice drawing. I like it. Oh no, the doggo poo poo bad doggy. Owner's crying cause her dog went poopy and all her friends are laughing at her, smirking at her. Poor girl, so embarrassed over her doggy. Aw, kitty. You messed up the whole house. Dude, those curtains do be looking thick, though. Ooh, nice clock. I like the leaves coming out of it. Very cute kitty. Bat Boy with the classic superhero. Amazing as always. Very cool. And then we got the tea. This is some Lapia tea. Sounds delicious. Got some spheres. Alright, so she's just drawing her desk. Give me attention. Me right now. Not right now. I have drawing class. Yes. Very good. Here's one I did of some people walking along a tentacle suspended high above the earth. And you can see the earth down there. And we have some of these guys in a train. They're pretty cool. Got a guy patting this little kid. We got another this meme. Good. Yes. What? Oh, he's yelling. Oh no. Oh no. Oh, they're all running from it. That's brilliant. Ooh, the hand tree, the handsy tree. The tree that gets a bit too touchy. And then we got some people jumping into a pool over there. Ooh, those are nice cliffs. Ooh, and the guy chilling on the beach. Very cool. Oh no, she's up in the sky crying because she can't get down. Oh no, she's gonna die up there. Unless the hot balloon she's attached to eventually cools down a bit. That must be scary though. We got a guy who dropped the watch. When you dropped your mom's watch. Oh no, oh, I hope it didn't break. Don't want an angry mom. And then lastly we have these guys picking some things from some strings in the sky. There's some big mushrooms, berries. Oh yeah, this is a great hand, by the way. Aw, it broke. Aw, rest in peace, my dude. Grounded for a month. Well, at least you'll have more time to do drawing lessons. See the positive. Well, that was it for me today. I hope you all had a fun time. I know I did. And continue to enjoy whatever's left of your day. Thank you all for coming. Oh, we got one last little sneaky in here. Got some chores. Oh no. Oh no, chores. Oh, she's feeling guilty. Oh no, this. Oh, this is brutal. Also, your name is Brutal, so it's very fitting. Alright. Bye bye, everyone.